Hello, good afternoon, welcome. We're going to give ourselves a couple of minutes as we have participants join. And just so people know, you are here today for the finance update related to some of our COVID relief funds that the Kentfield School District will be receiving. So thank you for joining today. And for those that need translation, we do have translation available. So si necesita traducir español, haga clic en el mundo o en los tres puntitos si tiene un Android y escoge Spanish. Precisa de traducir portugués, clique no mundo a los tres puntitos si vos tem un Android e escoger portugués. So I will leave that up just while people continue to join. So it is just a little after 5. I am going to go ahead and record this and go ahead and get started. So I will now press record. Oh, I'm sorry, it's automatically recording. Okay, welcome. Again, this is a finance meeting related to the Kentfield School District's COVID relief funds, our Safe Schools for All grants. So with that said, introductions. My name is Raquel Rose. I am lucky enough to be the superintendent here in the Kentfield School District, and co-hosting with me today is our new interim chief business official, Midge Hoffman. Midge, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Midge Hoffman. I am the interim CBO until Kentfield is able to find a permanent replacement. So glad to be with you.
Thanks so much, Midge. So today we are going to be going over the various dollars that our district will be receiving from the federal government as well as the state government related to in-person instruction. And so we have a pocket of funds that are coming in from the federal government known as the ESSER II and ESSER III dollars. And then we have a pocket of funds coming in from our state government, specifically called the In-Person Instruction IPI grant and Expanded Learning Opportunity, the ELO grant. Today is really going to be focused on the ELO grant. That is the grant in which we need to put a plan together, present to our Board of Trustees prior to June 1st. And so one of the key components is to get some input and engage with our community about how we plan to utilize those dollars. So Midge, you want to speak about these?
Sure. So ESSER Funds 2 and 3 are federal dollars. They come to the district based on the Title I funding that the district receives. Title I funding is used to serve underprivileged, low-income students, homeless, foster students, and the like. And we have a number of years to be able to use the funds. The ESSER II funds we need to spend by September 2023, and the ESSER III funds we have a little bit longer to spend through September 2024. There's a very broad spectrum of uses that we can use these funds for, and the focus will be supporting disproportionate student groups. All right. So for ESSER 2 and 3, some of the possible uses the Kentfield School District can consider is possibly using the funds for food service, free and reduced lunch, community engagement, possibly hiring a liaison to work with families, special education costs that may be incurred, unfunded liabilities, things that have been unforeseen that may come as a result of the COVID crisis. And overall, the goal is to provide increased student academic and social emotional services for Kentfield students.
When we think about the state funds, as I mentioned before, there are two allocations that we will be receiving. The first grant that I'm going to speak about is our IPI grant, the in-person instruction grant. We're going to receive a little over $318,000. We have till August of 2022 to expend these dollars. So not as much time as we have for the federal funds. These dollars are specifically to support in-person instruction, learning recovery, learning acceleration due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the key with these dollars is we need to show evidence to our state that we were open for some form of in-person instruction on or before April 1st. So that will be key. As long as we can show and prove that, then we are able to access these dollars. And so Midge will speak more about the compliance to that.
Right. So with regard to the compliance, we will be reporting quarterly and annually about how we are using and spending the funds. We have provided infrastructure in the way of air filtration systems, and it costs money to replenish the air filters and whatnot, things that are just not normally incurred when school is in normal session. Safety measures such as PPE equipment, personal protective equipment, such as face masks and other type of gear and supplies, student and staff supplies that may be needed to ensure safety. And in addition to that, extra support for supervision for students and to ensure that their safety is all in mind.
The key about these dollars too is that because we don't necessarily have to have a plan, we could begin utilizing these dollars as quickly as we're offering in-person instruction. So they could begin to be expended as early as now. That all being said, it must be in alignment with how we're utilizing our ESSER 2 and 3 funds, as well as our expanded learning opportunity funds. So the key for us as we think through the use of these funds, it's really about what are some of the new ways in which we needed to adjust so that we were fully ready to support an in-person instruction opportunity, especially during, obviously, a global pandemic. The next group of funds that we want to speak to is our expanded learning opportunity funds. And so we're receiving about $678,000, which is a significant amount of funds for our district. We have until August of 2022 to expend these dollars, and they too are to support in-person instruction. The focus on learning recovery and acceleration for our kiddos based on this recent pandemic that we've all endured. That being said, it's really important that in order to move forward the use of these dollars, we have specific areas in which the state has said, hey, think about these categories when you're thinking through how you want to utilize these funds to support the learning acceleration and recovery of your children. So Mitch.
All right. So the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, we must put together a plan that has to be approved by the board on or before June 1st. And it also requires, as Raquel mentioned earlier, that we are looking for input from the community in order to provide this plan. 10% of the funds that were being provided must be spent on paraprofessional services. In other words, instructional aides typically fit that description. And bottom line is the funds will be focused on direct support strategies to enhance and accelerate teaching and learning for our students.
And so there, as I mentioned before, there are specific categories that have been identified in the template in which we're going to be putting together our plan. And so what I want to do is highlight what are those categories, the overarching umbrellas, and then provide some examples of what could fall under those categories. And that speaks to the possible use of these funds. And so the first is speaking to extending instructional learning time. So an extended day model or a summer school intersession model. And so this is the idea of looking into next year. Are we looking at having opportunities where some students could have an extended day model? Our current schedule that we're implementing will be the schedule that we will continue to implement for the duration of this school year. We have no plans or intention to adjust that plan. That all being said, right now, there are opportunities where kids are coming before school or after school to receive intervention services. And so just to note that is happening for those children that it's been identified for. Another piece is related to accelerating progress to close the learning gap. And this is really identifying, is there more opportunity for small group supports, learning recovery programs and materials that might be necessary to support our children that are showing the need that they have, a higher level of need, and training for our staff. All of our staff, from our administrative team to our certificated teachers, to our classified support staff, just so they all are equipped with the tools to be the very best that they can be. And the third is related to community learning hubs. So many may be aware, we've partnered very well this year with Marin Richmond, so very thankful for their partnership with us. But there might be an opportunity to leverage slots at places like community learning hubs so that kids that might need high-speed internet or other academic supports, that they would have a space to go to after school or before school. Additional areas to look at, the fourth area is speaking to integrated student supports. And this is really speaking to how are we wrapping our arms around our kiddos to be sure they're really getting kind of some of the basic needs so that they can access their education. So one, health, counseling, and mental health services, being sure children have exactly what they need to be able to be present and to be at school and access their education. School meals. So breakfast and lunch, as many are aware, we have had a food service program that we've offered, and so maybe looking at enhancing that and offering a breakfast program as well. As we know, nutrition is so very important for our children. Again, before or after school programs that could be targeted specifically on the academics, or it could be social emotional supports for kids. It doesn't always have to be around the academics, but really how are we being sure that kids are feeling part of their school community and really feeling ready to access their learning. Trauma and social emotional learning. So recognizing that this pandemic has, it is a common experience we all have had, and in that we've all experienced a pandemic, but how that has played out in our everyday lives may look very different. And some might have experienced some trauma. And so just thinking through what supports could be available for those children. And also thinking about community or family liaison supports. Again, helping build that connection between the home and school so that people feel like they're part of the community, that they can come and get the resources and access that they need. And so those could be all different examples of how we would offer an integrated level of support for our kids so that it's not just about the academics that are happening in the school setting or the social emotional, but really that notion of wrapping our arms around our kiddos. The next is related to additional academic services. So this is really around how are we monitoring the progress of our kids. As many may be aware, we have implemented the MAP assessment this year, and we're utilizing that as our alternative assessment for our students. And this assessment really is something that we can utilize for progress monitoring, also diagnostic assessments. So we're screening kids, how are they presenting in their academics as well as their social emotional stance, and use these as benchmark assessments. Something that's guiding and informing how we're teaching our kids and how we're adjusting based on their needs. And then the last is really around engagement training. So just focusing on, how are we re-engaging our kiddos and our families into the school community as we come back into a more normal day-to-day operation, and just really being sure that we are connecting and having those social emotional supports and academics that people might need available for them so that we can really, get the most out of meeting our potential for all of our children. So overall, what we really want to be sure people are taking away from this presentation is to understand that we are, as a district, between our federal and state funds, are going to be receiving close to $1.3 million, which is a significant amount of money for our district. It is one-time dollars. It is restricted funds. So we have to be very, very careful and intentional about the way in which we utilize these funds. It can go towards personnel, but we have to acknowledge that at some point this money is going to run out. And so we have to know that typically when you bring on staff, that's an ongoing cost. And so we have to be very, very careful about it. So if we do any kind of restructuring or bringing on staffing, just recognizing that that's temporary in nature and that we would have to wean off over time because we may not have the funds to support it. Because as I mentioned a bit ago, and Midge mentioned, these funds have a time frame. They must be expended. The state funds must be expended by 2022 in the fall, and the federal funds have till as far out as 2024. So just knowing that we have a specific period of time in which we need to expend these dollars and that they are limited. Ultimately, the dollars are to support in-person instruction and learning acceleration. So however we focus and target these dollars, it's really about how are we leveraging more for our children so that they are able to meet their absolute potential. And so really focusing on that academic support, on that social emotional support, the family connection piece as well, so that they have their basic needs met, as well as feeling like they're really part of the school community. And last but not least is the acknowledgement that these two buckets of dollars that are coming forward from the federal government and the state government is that they really must demonstrate a coordination and an alignment. And so they can't happen kind of in isolation or in silos, but really happening in an integrated way. So the ELO, the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, is the grant that speaks to trying to get some community input and feedback. How would people prioritize these funds? But as we make that plan, we need to show the connection with these other dollars that we're receiving. And so it's really, really important that we have that, that we demonstrate that connection. And I'm also trying to loop all of this to our local control accountability plan, as well as our strategic plan, and seeing how we're prioritizing things as a district. So in terms of next steps, what you can expect is that there will be a survey that's going to be distributed to garner feedback from our community and input. You'll be able to see the various examples of areas we'd like to prioritize, as well as have some open-ended questions to offer up. Hey, maybe there's not something on the list that you heard today that you might be interested as a parent or a staff that you would like us to consider. And we'll take all of that input and utilize it to fill out our plan that will ultimately be submitted to our Board of Trustees for consideration and approval prior to June 1st. So, Midge, anything I missed that you'd want to chime in about before I open it up for questions?
No, none at all. I think you covered everything.
Okay, so with that said, that is the end of our presentation. And so we are going to now open it up for questions if people want to raise their hand. Oh, yes, there's one. Susan.
Hi, I was just wondering, I was speaking to some teachers today at Basic, and they were wondering if, you know, we have a reading specialist at Basic that is part-time, and we have a lot of students that are in need of additional help, and the times that she's available and the time slots that they've been given don't always work because, you know, maybe they need help in math and they're being pulled out during that time, or a PE or art or music, and they certainly need that balance and they need those. Could some of this money be used to extend her to a full-time position or more hours so that she could accommodate these students at times when it would be more advantageous for them to leave the classroom and to you know, have the intervention?
Yes, thank you for that question. For sure, these dollars could be utilized for that. So one of the areas that it talks about is accelerating progress to close the learning gap. And so in that area, it specifically speaks to tutoring or small group supports. And that would, what you just described, the small group reading intervention or mathematics intervention, those would be examples of ways in which we could utilize these dollars to support helping catch kids up. The key will be obviously with some of that progress monitoring and helping them, move along and monitor how they're progressing. But for sure, it could be something that would be able to expand or adjust the current level of FTE for a position like that.
Thank you.
Mhm. Their hands. Oh, Sophia.
Hi, it's actually Elisa.
Oh, hi, Elisa.
Sophia, that would be really great.
Hmm.
I think she's doing homework right now.
Hmm.
So I wondered if you could tell a little bit more about the professional development that you mentioned under the ELO section.
Okay. Do you mean like you have a more specific, like, do you have a question specifically or like an area in which you're interested in, or?
I'm just wondering, like when you say professional development, what kinds, can it be any kind of professional development? Does it have to be geared toward a certain curriculum or a group?
Mm-hmm. So for the ELO grant, it's specifically to support learning acceleration, right? So as we look at and we assess our students and determine how they're currently performing, our team of staff would identify these are some areas in which we want to do some additional focus. And so we may identify professional development in that area. So maybe it's around reading, maybe it's around writing, it could be around specific mathematics areas. So that's how they would identify the professional development to support that. The other piece, it could be professional development related to collaboration and alignment. So identifying essential standards that could be focused on to be sure that there is additional core understanding for our kiddos as they continue along their learning continuum. So it would be, the way we design this plan should be based off of data that we receive from any kind of formative assessments that we have related to how our students are performing.
Okay, thank you. I also just wanted to say how excited I am that you identified the home and school connection and engagement. That's something that I remember talking about at Site Council at Basich many, many years ago. And I haven't actually heard anyone use that phrase since then. And I'm sure that that will be a very worthy cause to try to reach, or goal to reach. So thank you for identifying that.
Great, so thank you. Okay. Other hands, Amy.
Hi, Raquel. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. You might have already said this. I was just kind of curious, like, ultimately, how are you guys deciding this? Like, is it you that's deciding it with like a group of an advisory board of teachers and staff? Is there going to be a parent advisory board? I'm just curious how you're going to ultimately decide what goes where.
Yeah, so part of it is the input that we're going to be receiving from staff and parents in the community related to the survey that we're going to be pushing out. I'm also going to be trying to tie it with some of the feedback that we've received through the LCAPA strategic plan listening sessions and stakeholder engagement to really see where people are prioritizing interests. And then also, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the importance of utilizing how students are currently performing to prioritize services for our kiddos. So you might have heard one of our team members mention that in talking with staff, the concern related to some of our primary age students that need additional supports in maybe reading intervention. And the challenge right now is because we have a part-time staff member providing that support that, and we don't want kids to lose out on some of the the services that really excite them about coming to school, wanting to rethink about how we could expand some of that time. And they may identify specifically based on assessment that we need some increased reading intervention supports. So I think it's that culmination of trying to take all of those pieces in together, align it to what the requirements are from the state, and to outline how we would want to implement it for the upcoming school year, and align it with those other federal dollars.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Oh, Susan. I get so excited when hands come up.
This is more of a clarification question, but I know that one of the categories was monies for extra hours, support, and supervision. And as you know, we have one assistant principal for 2 schools in our district, and she is really being stretched thin with support and supervision. And I was just wondering if some of those funds could be used to get her some support, or is that not covered under this?
No, it's another example of right now we are in a different time, right? And so there's a different level of need that we have on our school sites based on the current environment that we're in. And so based on that, in order to offer in-person learning, are there ways in which we need to augment our current staffing pattern? And the idea is that over time that might subside. And so we're not going to always have these dollars, but for the time being, if there's ways in which we can set up a system that's more beneficial for our students and for our staff to be able to dig into the work that we get to do, then for sure we'd be interested in doing that. So it'll be really important that, as I mentioned, the survey is just one form. I feel like I want people to also know if there's direct feedback they want to provide, or they can tell their administrators or email me directly to share, hey, this is something that I didn't see it on the survey. It's something I want to be sure that it could potentially be prioritized. I'm hearing it a lot from my colleagues. And so what you just mentioned, Susan, if there's concern related to, being sure we have the adequate level of supervision support on our sites at an administrative level, then that I would want you to put that in the survey feedback as well, because ultimately that will benefit our students and our staff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? Elisa.
Thanks. I'm only speaking up because it seemed like things were kind of quiet. And I wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to raise their hand. Going back to Amy's question in terms of how decisions will be made, what I don't think I understood or caught, will the ultimate decisions be made by you and Grant and Marianne in terms of, and then recommended to the board, or is there a different way that would go?
Well, yeah, so as the administrators, we're going to take the feedback in, and we are going to decipher how we want to kind of categorize the use of the dollars specifically for these ELO funds that would be put in this plan, and talk about how we're going to be monitoring that. And then ultimately the board would review that plan that we bring forward and may ask, tell us, how did you pick this specific service, or why did you identify reading intervention? And ultimately, we'd want to provide data to support that. And so explaining kind of where our rationale is coming from, and feedback from our community. And so they will ultimately see the plan and provide the final consideration of approval.
Do we have to get approval of this plan the same way our SSSP had to be filed with the state and approved?
It needs to be approved by our Board of Trustees on or before June 1st. And so that's why, which the SSSPP was something that we post on our website and we have reviewed by Public Health. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, Lisa.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'm doing too many things at once. I was just trying to remember how all these different projects get approved by the state or funded or whatever. So once the board says, yes, that's good enough, we don't have to have any state approval. We just have to have it done by a certain date.
That's my understanding. Midge, do you understand any different than that?
No, that by June 1st.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the other thing too, just for clarification's sake, so that what I'm speaking to about the plan that's specifically for the ELO, the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. The IPI, the in-person instruction grant, that is simply, we have to confirm through a form that we'll be receiving sometime in May that confirms that we were offering some form of in-person learning prior to on or before April 1st. And once we confirm that, we will be able to receive those dollars. The ESSER dollars, we are, and Midge, you might need to chime in, but what I believe is that's an apportionment that we receive based on our student population. And so that's not, we do have to comply related to the restrictions that are around those dollars.
Yes.
But it's not a plan like the ELO plan, if that helps a little bit.
No, not, yeah. Only those dollars require an absolute a board approved plan.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. So I guess since I don't see any more hands up, we can go ahead and close. And so what people can expect moving forward is this presentation is recorded. It will be posted on our website. I will send it out with the survey. I'm anticipating that survey to come out tomorrow, tomorrow's Wednesday, so Thursday at the latest, but I'm trying to get that through by tomorrow. And my hope is that people will respond to the survey. I'm also going to try to do some more direct outreach to people to really try to get the feedback to help us be as informed as we can as we build these plans moving forward. So thank you all for your time and being present today. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out via email or call. Take good care.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, Selma. Thanks, George. Appreciate your time tonight. Thanks, Midge.
Thanks.